It's one of those pictures. One of the pictures where you don't see it at first, right? This photo comes out of Wisconsin State University. It's from 2012 and it was taken by Aaron Silva. What looks like just an abandoned hallway, if you look very close to the back left, you'll see it. The outline of a person who had been watching him from around the corner. For context, this was a very common tradition at this school. A lot of people would dare each other to go inside the abandoned infirmary that was just off campus. You go inside using just a flashlight and whoever stays in the longest eventually wins. But Aaron was never going to make it out. After more than an hour had passed, his friends eventually became concerned and they go in looking for him, where they found him and described him as cut from the mouth down to the center of his chest. This was a hugely disturbing case for police, but they eventually do retrieve his phone and they zero in on this picture, a picture which they believe shows who might have done this to Aaron. And if you increase the brightness, you can see the outline even better.
These are some extremely unsettling facts, and I found all these on Reddit. Number 1 is the tragic story of Joyce Vincent. Joyce Vincent was a normal person like anybody else who lived in an apartment by herself until she tragically passed away in 2003. Joyce's body would remain in her apartment for 3 years, and the only reason the police found her was because a cop was in the building and noticed a foul stench coming out of her room. Number 2. Tumors. It's the last thing you want to hear in a doctor's office, and in general, it's just bad. But this is gonna make it worse. It's been documented for a lot of people that have had tumors removed, that they have had teeth, hair, and even eyes. And finally, body balloons. If your body is left uncured or untouched for a long enough period of time after you have passed away, the gases within your stomach will begin to swell. And one day, eventually, they will pop. Kinda makes you wonder what happened to Joyce in her apartment. Okay, I'm done, because these ones were grossing me out, but I guess that's why.
Can you do the crying clown? Disclaimer, if you're scared of clowns, this story might not be for you. This story is an old Japanese urban legend, and it goes like this. There was a child walking to school one day down a lone country road. No wind was blowing and there was no sound, not even birds chirping. It was dead silent. As the child got further down the road, they felt somebody watching them, so they turned around and they saw a clown along the horizon running towards them at full speed. They continued walking, yet every time they turned around, the clown was closer. When they stopped walking, the clown stopped walking, but when they started walking, the clown started running. Eventually, the child got closer and closer to school and decided to run the rest of the way to the schoolhouse. Once they reached the gates to school, something grabbed their shoulder. It was the clown, and he said in a playful voice, "I got you." Yet the clown had tears streaming down his face. He then pulled out a knife and said, "Next time I catch you, I'll have to kill you. See you again," and walked away.
This family's 2 dogs killed their 2 kids. A couple days ago, 2 pet pit bulls killed 2 very young girls. Their mom, whose name is Christy Bernard, was also injured while trying to save her daughter and son. Nobody knows what triggered the attack and why their pet dogs killed them. What makes this story extremely sad is that these kids' mother tried to save them, but it was too late. And she had to watch as her 2 pet dogs killed her kids. Further details of this extremely disturbing event have yet to come out. The 2 pet pit bulls have been taken away to local animal control department, but it's unclear if they have been put down yet.
I really want to talk about this photo. The security guard at the Bryson Avenue Mall located in Virginia took this photo in 2011. It would later be turned into police, but the woman seen here was never found. For context, the security guard's name was Sean Mercado, and he worked the night shift at this mall. But the mall had been having strange things happening for weeks. Like on after hours, there are store alarms going off, but nobody's ever found. They're hearing people run through the mall, but again, they never see anybody. Until one night when Sean Mercado goes out to have a cigarette, he's just kind of patrolling the parking lot, and he goes back to enter through the employee entrance when he saw this woman staring back at him from inside the mall. He takes a photo for proof, and then he radios for backup, and he goes in after her. He claimed to chase her as fast as he could, but he eventually lost her inside that mall. And despite a police investigation, she would never be found.
Legend or lie, the Petrified Forest. Escalante Petrified Forest State Park in Utah is beautiful. Some of the trails you can embark on will lead you to fascinating and beautiful pieces of wood. You may be tempted to take one or a piece of one home with you. Don't. This petrified wood comes with a curse. Burnt down houses, financial ruin, severe illness, cancer, even death have all been attributed to the curse of the petrified wood. Hundreds of pieces are sent back a year after a string of rotten luck suffered by the people who stole them. Allegedly, once the wood was returned, their lives went back to normal. In this circumstance, it doesn't really matter if you think this is a legend or a lie. It is illegal to steal this wood from the state park regardless. Just leave the wood alone. I wouldn't want you to get cursed.
Detectives said that this twisted case was unlike anything they had ever seen. This is the bizarre case of the Tangled Web.
In the fall of 2012 in Omaha, Nebraska, Dave Krupa met a beautiful woman named Carrie Farver. She brought her car into his auto repair shop, and the mechanic was immediately attracted to her. The two hit it off and began seeing each other. One night after a date, they drove back to Dave's place where they ran into Dave's ex, Liz Gollier. Liz had shown up to pick up some of her things as the two had recently broken up. They said hello and Liz left.
And Carrie and Dave were a really great fit. Neither were looking for anything too serious and just wanted to have fun.
Carrie herself had a son and was trying to get her life back on track after struggling with some mental health issues in years past. Things were going really well, and Dave said he was beginning to fall for Carrie. Then one day in early November, Dave left for work as Carrie stayed at his apartment and worked.
A few hours later, Dave got a text from Carrie asking if the two should move in together, which was out of the blue.
Dave said no, and then got a text back saying, "Fine, I don't want to see you again, go away. I'm dating someone else, I hate you."
Dave was really confused. This seemed very out of character for Carrie.
But he thought the two were over. Shortly after, Dave started receiving strange and threatening messages from Carrie's phone and emails. The messages stated that she was watching him from outside his window and knew things going on inside Dave's apartment. The messages wouldn't stop. It appeared Carrie was stalking Dave.
She said that she had his spare key and was letting herself into his apartment when he was gone. Really weird stuff. The messages were constant and relentless.
Liz, Dave's ex, showed him messages and appeared that Carrie was stalking her as well. On the other side of town, things were getting very concerning for Carrie's family and her son when they too started receiving strange messages from Carrie's phone. Messages saying that she was quitting her job and that she had moved to Kansas.
Even stranger, they could never get Carrie on the phone. Just these weird, cryptic messages.
Time passed, and when Carrie didn't even show up for her own father's funeral, the family knew something was very wrong.
And you will not believe what happened next. Go to part 2. Insane. This is the Tangled Web case, part 2.
Carrie Farver hadn't been seen in person in months, and family and police were alarmed when her car was later found abandoned in a parking lot.
The car was clean, no sign of Carrie, except there was one unidentified fingerprint.
And on Dave's end, things were getting worse and worse. He'd even gotten a new phone, and somehow the stalking texts from Carrie kept coming. Things took a strange turn when one day, Liz's house was set on fire, her many pets lost in the blaze. Liz said it had to have been Carrie who did this.
And the stalking and harassing continued for years.
Until April 2015, a detective named Ryan Avis began looking into the case.
Carrie's family had contacted investigators beforehand, but they really didn't take it seriously, because they had Dave and Liz reporting that she was stalking them.
But Detective Avis had a hunch and was suspicious that no one had seen Carrie in such a long time. Something wasn't right. One day, Detective Avis came into work to find Liz at the police station. Instead of filing a complaint against Carrie, as she had done so many times before,
she was there to tell police that another one of Dave's ex-girlfriends was now stalking her too.
Finally, police began to question everything. What if it was actually Liz behind all this, and not Carrie? And if that's the case, then what happened to Carrie?
Police began investigating, and what they found is nauseating.
They eventually found out that Liz was the one who had been sending all those messages to Dave and Carrie's family the entire time.
She had been posing as Carrie for years.
And did it all in a ruse to get back with Dave. The shocking revelation led to one question: what did Liz do to Carrie? Police linked that fingerprint found in Carrie's car to Liz and uncovered a memory card of Liz's that contained a disturbing photo. The photo appeared to show Carrie passed with the same distinctive tattoo Farver had on her foot to identify her. It's believed that Liz attacked Carrie that morning that Dave started receiving those strange text messages from Carrie's phone, and then Liz went on to impersonate her for years. Police believe it took Liz at least 40 to 50 hours a week to keep up with the stalking and harassing text messages.
And she burned her own house down.
With the photo evidence, the print found in Carrie's car, and a mound of other evidence from Liz's computers, she was charged and convicted.
And sentenced to life behind bars.
And Carrie has never been found. Dave was shocked and disgusted by the whole thing and claimed he had no idea.
Goodbye, Liz. I pray for Carrie's family. What are your thoughts on this case?
disturbing stalkers caught on camera. This scary video was uploaded to YouTube by CBS Sacramento in 2021 and shows an interview with a woman who is terribly worried about her family's safety because of an alleged stalker who has been appearing at their door for weeks. The man in question has been caught on camera several times by the doorbell security camera. In each shot, the mysterious man can be seen knocking insistently, saying he is from social services and that he needs to get into the house to do a checkup.
Social services. Yeah, my social services. You need to leave.
Normal-looking photos that have a disturbing backstory, Part 22. In 1945, a fire broke loose on the ship on the left. The men on the right are firefighters attempting to extinguish it. Moments later, it detonated one of the largest non-nuclear explosions in history. 468 people died and over 5,000 were injured. This abstract art was painted by cult leader Charles Manson, who convinced his followers to kill 9 people in Los Angeles in 1969. This is the last photo ever taken of Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. The girl on the left, wearing flowers, hugged him, detonating a bomb which killed him and the photographer. In 2018, Tamla Horsford went to a sleepover with some friends to watch football and party. There were 7 white women and 3 men at the party in Georgia. And the next morning, Tamla was found dead face down in the backyard. The case was ruled an accident, but in light of recent events, it has thankfully been reopened.
I had never heard of this before, so I want to know, have you guys heard of the true story of Midnight Mary? On October 15th of 1872, Mary Hart suddenly just dropped dead. Now, what's specific to this story was that she was pronounced gone at exactly midnight, and they buried her in the Evergreen Cemetery located in New Haven, Connecticut. Something was very wrong. All of her relatives had these extreme nightmares where they would hear Mary screaming as if they could hear it from underground. These nightmares actually became so bad for the family that they exhumed the body, which is when they found the most shocking part of the story: scratch marks from inside her casket. She had accidentally been buried alive. So the legend has it that she continues to roam the grounds of this cemetery in hatred of the world that falsely buried her when she was still living. Those who speak her name or even hear of the story seem to summon her. And if you're ever at her grave beyond midnight, the legend has it that you'll die very soon after.
There is a place on Earth where you're not allowed to die. This place is called Longyearbyen, and dying here has been illegal since the 1950s due to its long history. This place is located on the Arctic archipelago of Svalbard, and it is always cold. There is a very thick layer of permafrost below the ground, which means when you bury people here, their bodies cannot decompose. The reasoning behind these rules was officially backed in the 1990s, when scientists found out that the body of a human who had passed in 1918 from influenza still contained the virus fully preserved. And if the frost were to melt here, this would pose a huge threat to the Svalbard population. Cremated burials are still allowed here, but you can't do it without a state license. When somebody is terminally ill, they must leave the island and fly to the Norwegian mainland to live out their final days.
I don't even need a microphone. My name is Rita Isbell.
No, ma'am. You'll address the court first.
My name is Rita Isbell, and I'm the oldest sister of Errol Lindsay. Whatever your name is, Satan. I'm mad. This is how you act when you are out of control. I don't want to ever see my mother have to go through this again. Never, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, I hate you, mother. I hate you. This is out of control. Don't Jeffrey, I kill you.
Disturbing facts that will ruin your life. Closed in 1963, Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary is the most famous prison in the United States. Many of the nation's most notorious criminals were imprisoned there. The most famous prison in the UK, the Tower of London, was home to some of the most notable prisoners in history and was active from the 12th to 20th centuries. The English ruling class oppressed many people for hundreds of years, and today the tower is said to be haunted by those victims. For 100 years, French Guiana's Devil's Island was home to various prisoners, from many of Napoleon's enemies to hardened criminals. The island was known for its incredibly harsh conditions and for being rife with disease. The French were pretty good, it seems, at holding prisoners. As if prisons weren't enough, they created the oubliette, a specialized dungeon beneath a trapdoor out of reach to those under it. Derived from the word oublier, meaning to forget, the dungeon was a narrow passageway large enough only for the confines of a standing body, which allowed the prisoners to wallow away to their death. Comment below which fact disturbed you.
Scary stories. A few years ago, my brother would get a call on his cell phone around 2 to 3 a.m. every night. He would answer, and it was this hellish sounding noise, like static mixed with screams. He changed his cell number a month after this, and it stopped. Then after a week or so, it began again. The exact same noise, exact same time. Finally, one day he decided to back dial the call. It was an old man that had no clue what he was talking about. Still, the calls persisted. If he didn't answer, it would call a few more times. No messages were left. He decided to say screw it, ended his contract with his phone company, switched to a new one, and then got a new number. You guessed it. The screaming static calls continued after a short time. By this time, he was terrified every night, unsure of why this was happening. He called the number back again and got a different person. Around this time, he lost his job and his phone was disconnected. One day, my mom asked me to listen to this weird message she got on our home phone. It was the static screaming. We showed my brother and he was freaking out. He back dialed the number again, and it said the number was disconnected this time. He never heard from it again after that.
Three most brutal dictators. Number 1, Idi Amin. Idi Amin was the self-declared president of Uganda. He became known as the Butcher of Uganda. This is because he killed people by feeding them to crocodiles, claimed he was a cannibal, and even mutilated one of his own wives and rearranged her limbs. Number 2, Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was the dictator of Iraq from 1979 to 2003. During his reign, he authorized countless attacks on people. These included chemical attacks, eye gougings, beatings, and other brutal attacks. Number 3, Pol Pot. Pol Pot was the leader of the Khmer Rouge who carried out the Cambodian genocide. He wanted to create a classless agrarian society. As Prime Minister from 1976 to 1979, his policies led to the deaths of 2 million people, approximately 25% of the whole population.
The Looky Look.
Scariest Things Found in the Woods, PT.7.